Hello, and thank you for joining me once again. It's Greg from Bug Out Gear Layouts and Tactics, a prepping site Facebook page, and urbansafetysurvival.net. So this week we're going to talk about groups, right? Group dynamics. What is an asset to a group? What the groups look for? If you're starting a group because you don't have one already, what you should be looking for, the types of skills and people you want in your group, right? So every group needs to have a process, right? An application process. You got to figure out who it is that's trying to come into your group, right? You That person needs to have skills. They need to bring something to the group. Everybody turns around and says, or I've had a lot of people tell me, listen, I got guns, I got ammo, I got you. Yeah, but what about food? What about medical supplies? What skills? Um, Pretty much everybody in the prepper community, if they're legally able to have and possess, depending on where they live in the world or what part of the United States and what their background is and things like that, they're more than likely going to have firearms and ammo themselves, right? So just bringing that to the group doesn't bring any assets or any value to the group because the group pretty much has all that, right? Um, a group should be giving the new member, once they're accepted, a list of things they should have, right? Some groups have minimum requirements. Some groups you put in collectively into stores, right? But pretty much you're gonna have to have one, what you need for something short term, whether that's 72 hours, a week, whatever the groups plan on. Okay, this is happening. We wait for this, we leave, we meet, we do what we do, right? So they're gonna you're gonna have to be able to sustain yourself without the group for a minimum amount of time. Most groups that we talk to, we train, it's 72 hours, right? 3 days. You have 3 days of having to be able to self sustain to get to where you gotta go. Or they look at events, they have a manual, they'll have a process of A happens, B happens, C happens, we do D, right? So it all depends on the group itself. So what do you have that's an asset for the group, right? Somebody replied, "My good looks and my wit." That's not an asset to the group. Most group want assets; they don't want liabilities. Um, you need skills, you need knowledge, and it's not hard and massive amount of knowledge that's needed, right? So one group I know for sure, um, daycare teachers, right? And it's not for the fact that it's they need somebody to teach because they 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 want specifically a certain amount of daycare employees, a certain amount of teachers, a certain amount of this, a certain amount of that, right? But getting back to the daycare, somebody that knows, somebody that's used to taking care of young kids, teaching them, and being able to connect with them. Because if it all goes south, we're not going to have things we have now. You may not have tablets, no internet, no phone, no TV to keep the kids engaged. So you go back to simple things like circle time and book readings and teaching them basics at that age. So they wanted a certain amount of daycare teachers or daycare employees. They wanted a certain amount of school age professionals. And I say that because not everybody was a teacher. They had some teachers' aides and things like that to meet their quota, so that way when the kids are that age, they can teach. They have somebody that's used to that, that has that skill, has that knowledge, is doing that now, so that way they can continue. Electricians. And I know you say, hey, but we may not have power. Those skills transfer over into other things. You'd be surprised on how plumbing and electricity are similar, right? You got your hot and your neutral, you have your water feed, you have your sewer, right? Some of it mixes together. So they wanted electricians, they wanted carpenters, they wanted plumbers, fire guys, EMS guys, medical personnel, prior military. They wanted all that. They wanted that mix, so that way their group is self-sustaining. They have those skills, that knowledge in the group itself, right? So they had their medical group, their security group, their education group, their cooks, their supply chain people. They had all that. They accounted for everything with their group, right? So again, what do you bring to the group? What makes you an asset for them, right? What kind of skills do you have? Do you have your own supplies? Are you expecting them to give you supplies until you can build your own? Redundancies, right? So we look at, okay, we don't have a group, but we're gonna start. Let's start with family. How many people have first aid training? How many people have firearm training, survival training, bushcraft training? How many people can sew? How many people can knit? Right? Because if you lose one person that only has that one skill and nobody else has that skill, you lose that skill. Right? So you have people that can, one person that can sew and knit, and they don't make it, who does the repairs? Who does the knitting to make new clothing or blankets or hats or things you need? You don't have that, right? So you have to have those redundancies, multiple people trained to do the same thing, right? And I'm not saying your medical guys only do medical. Maybe they're trained in medical and security. Maybe they're trained in medical and logistics. We have that one is none and two is one mentality, right? So we have to have those redundancies. And when it comes to skills, it's people, right? We have to have multiple people that can do the same thing. That way we have that skills for the group, right? So the membership process. You approaching a group, they should be wary of you. They don't know you. Maybe you heard about them. Maybe they invited you in. That first meeting's not going to be where the group meets or where they train or where all their stuff is, right? Operational security, OPSEC, they're going to hold that back. It's to be expected. It's not, okay, I want to join your group, show me everything you got. That's not going to happen. Just like you shouldn't show them everything you have. Right? They'll have a list. Most of them should have a list and that application process. I'm going to talk about right now. I have in front of me an accelerated membership application process, and I'll go over it quickly. So what it is it's an urgent request to join the group. So it's a graft, right? So do they hold a high priority skill, right? See Appendix A. Yes, fast track membership to critical priority. No. Do they have any useful skills or abilities? Yes. Do they have supplies? No. Is it a charity case, right? See charity plan, right? If they have supplies, no. Will the group provide? No. They're kicked out, right? It ends there. Will the group provide? Yes. accelerated security interview, right? Do they have supplies? Are they acceptable? Accelerated security interview. Not enough. Not enough. How long will it acquire enough supplies? Give them time to get the supplies. Unacceptable. Time projected. Deny membership. Right? Does the whole family pass the interview? Remember, you're going into a group, so it's you and a household. They're gonna want to sit with you and your household. Everybody. That interview includes everybody. It includes information about everybody. May not do it on the first interview, but part of that part of that process should be to interview everybody, right? Does everybody have a skill that they can use? Or is it just you, right? Or do you know, it's a lifelong friend and they have a group and, they're bringing you in, right? That's, part of the process, right? Then you move on to probationary period. Do you satisfy the probationary period? If you do, you're accepted into the group and assigned to duty. If you're not, you're denied membership. Right? So how do we go about, as a group, interviewing people, right? Do it in a neutral place, right? Coffee shop, diner, state park, picnic area. If it's the weather's not brutal out, you would do it in something like that. Quick, easy, 5-minute interview. You're not looking to get everything out of them because, both sides are going to be wary of each other at first. You sit down, you go over some stuff, you meet again. Some groups do full background checks, fingerprints, drug testing. They want to know. They want to make sure you're not a liability to the group, right? They may do that background check on your family to make sure that there's nobody in your immediate family that you're taking with you into the group is a liability to the group. In one of our classes, one of our talks, we talk about the drug addict, right? Even though he doesn't know everything, or he doesn't have, or it could be a she, have access to everything, just knowing who is in the group, where that location of storage might be, may be an issue if they need money for that fix, right? So that's something that a lot of groups will take into consideration and not allow, because that can lead to something down the line. Some other groups are like, as long as it's moderate and we don't have to worry, we don't have to worry about maybe some barter items we store to trade going missing, or, what happens if they get sick with withdrawal, right? All those things come into play. And and most groups are going to worry about that and have that process and thought in their mind. So that's something you're going to go through. You're going to need a minimum amount of supplies to join the group. Again, you're going to be able to have to sustain yourself. What do you bring? Do you have communication? Do you have a GMRS license, a ham license? What skill do you have? Again, all these go into account when you're joining an already established group. If you are starting your own group, right, you find like-minded people in your area, these are things you need to take into consideration for your group. It's as much as we may want to take everybody in and say, we'll worry about it later. Let's I think things are getting real bad right now. Let's get this group together. It has to be in steps, and you have to have those assets, those skills, those priorities, those supplies, those redundancies have to be in play and together, or that may lead the group to failure. It's just the reality of it. Some people don't understand that. They don't get it. It's not just about having supplies and we'll figure it out and we work together. Established groups already have their plans. They, you sit down, you put an operational plan together. You know, what is the focus of this group? What's the purpose? Um, what are we going to do to sustain the group together as a whole for a long period? Starting a new group, that's things you have to think about, right? The group needs leadership. Some people may say it shouldn't be democratic. You don't want 52% deciding the wrong thing for the whole group. That's up to the group, right? A council type leadership, similar to something like, let's say, a city council, where you have, maybe one representative from each household sit on the council. They discuss things and run things together, over just one person being in charge. But let's say your bug out location, or where you're going to it's owned by one person. His rules, you're going to be on my property. What I say goes. You may run into that. You have other groups that put into a trust and purchase land collectively. So it doesn't belong to just one person, and that's their goal. We're going to set this up. Everybody's going to have, whether it's their tiny home, their log cabin, their survival shelter here. We're together. We sectioned off this part for farming, this part for the animals, this part for animal husbandry. This is our security, this is our gate, this is where we're going to have people come in and out. That all has to be thought out of before things go bad. If you wait to the last minute, you're reacting, not preparing. So all that has to come into play beforehand, before you start, bringing people in. It has to be done. It has to be done together. It has to be, how do you say, brainstorming. All that brainstorming needs to be done pre-disaster, pre-SHTF, we're all going off grid together, right? Before it happens, it needs to be put into play. It's only too late to start if it's all gone to hell, right? But then again, it might not be, chaos might work for you. But you need to have that. You need to put that into account now when you're going looking for people, you're bringing people in, or you're starting. You need that application process. You need that 3 or 4 interviews to meet the people. If you have a group, they're not going to take you to their location where they're all going to meet or where they're all going to stay. You might do it where, hey, we're having a camp out this week at the state park. Come on down, rent a campsite, or we rent a group campsite and it holds 50 people. We got 2 of them, so we can have 100 people. Come on down, bring the tent, bring your family, get to know everybody. Right? Let's see how you are. Training together in a large group may bring attention. Again, unless you have the property, you have the remote area to go and train, it may bring attention. Again, how many people go camping? How many, on a holiday weekend, whether you got people pulling into a campground with trailers, or you got people tent camping, car camping, things like that, a bunch of people show up. You just happen to know each other, right? You take a hike in the woods and do some wilderness first aid training, right? That may not be noticed. As much as, it's a holiday weekend, everybody's throwing back some beers and having fun, and you're making a weekend of it. You're seeing how the new person fits in with the group. Do their skills match? or what they told you they know, their knowledge, is it there? Um, Another thing we run across is, you know, ex-military. Oh, I'm ex-military. Not everybody in the military gets the same training. I just think of a movie I used to like watching when I was younger. I'm gonna get you, sucker. Right? The guy's there. He has all these medals and all this and all that. And the one guy has an eye patch. And when he says his MOS, he's a secretary. The guy with the eye patch is the same thing. Another secretary. Typing ribbons. Report ribbons. The guy lost his eyesight from a paperclip with rubber band fight. Right? Not everybody's trained this, in the same thing. Militaries have a bunch of different jobs they need to fill. People fill them, right? They enlist in the military, they fill them. You gotta properly vet them, make sure that that skill that they claim they have from the military, it's a skill that's useful, right? It all goes back to those skills. No matter what it is they say, a DD-214 is your friend. It'll list what they did, what their MOSs was. They talk about their prior military. You don't have a military person in your group, ask to see their DD-214, right? They should be able to produce it, right? Same thing when it goes to people in the public safety field, right? Just because they're public safety doesn't mean they're on the road. I have somebody that tried to correct me in a department that I worked for, and all it was nepotism. He came out of the academy, he came out of schooling. Daddy was chief. So he comes out, he's in the department, it's, 2 weeks later, he's deputy chief. Never worked in the field, doesn't know what he's doing. Try to correct me, not knowing. To say I didn't last at that department too long. My choice, not theirs. You have to vet. You have to make sure. Not every firefighter goes in and fights fires. They may go to the fire academy and then get stuck on a tower ladder on their first real fire because it breaks and it's out in the freezing cold, and now they're asking for a transfer to the director's office because they don't want to do that again. Right? Know somebody that's happened to. A lot of law enforcement, it's a family thing. Daddy was in law enforcement, the children are in law enforcement, or the mother was in law enforcement and the children follow in the footsteps. Depending on the rank that family member above them has, some of them go right into easy jobs and never really do anything. Right? So you want to make sure, whether it's military, public safety, even in industry, union workers, daddy's union president, his kid's going to have an easy job. So you got to make sure that they know that skill. Don't be scared to test them on it. Don't be scared to interview them. Don't be scared to hold them back a little bit before you bring them in, until you know stuff about them. Right? Here, where I live, you can access the felony database from the court publicly. The only access they don't give you is juvenile records and non-convictions. Right? So if they served time, they were convicted of a felony, they were convicted of a misdemeanor, and they were incarcerated, it's going to be in public record. There's a way to find it. Again, I know groups that send members for fingerprints, drug testing, run a background check where they pay some, a service or somebody to run a criminal and sex offender check on them, just to make sure that they're not taking somebody into the group that's going to become a liability to the group later. These are group dynamics. These are things that we have to worry about. You have to worry about if you're starting a group. Everybody has to be on the same page. It takes a lot of training. I had a class after class we were talking. I was talking to one of the people in the class, and somebody came up to him and was like, "Listen, I don't have time to do the training with you guys and all this. Your commitment is just too much for me right now. But you know what? If things get bad, I'm right there with you." And the student turned around and told him, "So you think you're gonna come when things get bad? You don't know our communication. You don't know our hand signals. You don't know how we operate. We don't know how you operate. You think we're gonna accept you then? If you can't make that commitment now, there's no commitment to make later." And it's true. Again, you want to make sure that you can do things together, right? You don't want to bring somebody in that is not going to listen, right? Here's our rules. Binders. I've seen plenty of binders full of rules for groups, right? Regulations, operating guidelines, just to make sure that the group ran as smooth as possible. So that's what you're looking at when you look at a group. They have to think of everything beforehand and try to make sure they have that understanding of how it's going to go. All right. I know this has been a long video, my longest one yet. Stay safe. Keep prepping. Again, Bug Out Gear Layouts and Tactics, a prepping site Facebook page, urbansafetysurvival.net. Have a good night.